I stand in affirmation of the topic which states smartphones and tablets hinder learning when used in educational settings for children younger than 9 years old. My first contention will be it hinders their ability to learn. And the reason why is because we should be looking at the educational context and their ability to learn. Now, with that in mind, according to PBS, experts recommend waiting until they're a preschool age. Children under 2 years of age learn best from real-world experiences and interactions, which is extremely important in their developmental process. In fact, according to Janie Radisky, a medical doctor at Boston University, these devices also may replace hands-on activities important for the development of sensory motor and visual motor skills, which are important for the learning and development of math and science. Now, furthermore, empirically, we find this is also true because according to the New York Times in 2020, according to one recent study of 47 children ages 3 to 5, those with higher exposure to screens had poor expressive language and did worse on tests of language processing speed. Now, what we find from this is that essentially that a smartphone or tablet is harmful to a children's ability to learn because it distracts their attention and it doesn't match with how their brain and mind is developing at that age. And because it doesn't interface with how they're actually supposed to learn, at least at that age, we shouldn't allow them to have tablets and smartphones. And now my second contention is that it's harmful to physical health. According to California State University in January 2015, research shows that children are using massive amounts of media, and those with more screen time have been shown to have increased obesity, reduced physical activity, and decreased health. Increased daily technology use would predict ill-being if they're factoring out eating habits of physical activity was reported. For children and preteens, total media consumption predicted ill-being.
The pandemic known as COVID-19 shook our world. We now see most of our friends, families, and colleagues through screen rather than in person. Although our lives were already technologically dependent, it is more important now than ever to educate the next generation to use technology in a safe and responsible manner. After all, a new smartphone or tablet will be released year after year. Technological growth won't stop, but what we can do is prepare the next generation to adapt to a rapidly changing technology, which is why I stand here to negate the topic. It's crucial to look at this debate within the context of today's society. Social media and digital understanding is an essential 21st century skill. Moreover, with the rise of COVID-19, an understanding of how to use digital tools responsibly is becoming more of a necessity than an option. According to the Common Sense Media in 2018, social media sure has its negatives, but if it's all bad, how are teens leading the charge against cyberbullying? How did they organize a national school walkout day to protest gun laws? Social media, despite its flaws, is mostly positive, and new research is shedding light on the good things that can happen when kids connect, share, and learn online. As kids begin to use tools, they are learning the responsibility that comes with the power to broadcast to the world, an essential 21st century skill. Moreover, a survey by the EPT found that 79% of professional educators say technology is becoming a crucial part of classroom education. In addition, 87% of educators agree that technology helps students develop technological skills for the future. The key to using technological tools for learning is when children are supervised properly. According to Jeannie Galindo, children are able to use technology properly and efficiently when supervised properly.
Okay, so to start off, I want to talk about why do you mention COVID-19 and how is that specifically relevant to this topic?
So I feel like COVID-19 is just one of many examples that's really pertinent because we're talking about a digital world in a digital age. Today, when we look at the current COVID-19 crisis, what we're seeing is that teens are able to adapt to the situation using social media, using Zoom, and using online learning, specifically because they have those digital skills. So the reason why I'm advocating for more technological use in educational settings is so that teens can, young children can learn even better skills and to develop better responsibilities pertaining to technology.
So why is it necessary that young children under the age of 9 have to develop those skills and have that necessity, as you say?
Because according to my Jeanine Galindo piece of evidence, children are
at the age of 4 to 5, they're the most flexible. They're able to absorb a lot of information at that age. So once they're taught at a young age how to use technology in a responsible manner and fashion, they're more likely to retain those same ideas and then to that same responsibility over time.
But isn't that all the more reason why we shouldn't give them tablets and smartphones at that age? Because if their ability to absorb information is so high, doesn't that mean we need to have optimal learning environments without smartphones and technology to distract them in educational context?
I'm glad you asked that question because I was going to talk about it in my rebuttal anyways, but there's a MIT study that actually shows that when they looked at 126 longitudinal studies looking at children from a younger age to an older age, they found that children who had technology in classroom were actually able to learn substantially more over time.
All right, thank you.
Hello. So one of the things I noticed you said within your first contention, according to your New York Times evidence, children who had screens in their bedroom actually showed lower language scores. So, but how does that correlate to devices being actually in the classroom?
Well, again, if you look at the second part of that same exact sentence, I actually stated that 60% had their own portable devices, and that actually entails their ownership and their access to a device in any context besides the bedroom.
All right. So another question I wanted to ask was, how could you explain the cognitive process or how having a device in a classroom may hinder a child's learning process?
Yeah, so essentially what we found is that in terms of their cognitive abilities, what we see is that children, not only are they more active, which goes along with my second contention that they need physical activity while they're learning, but also we see that different types of learning, the idea of verbal auditory learning or kinesthetic learning. Well, what we find is that from media devices and screens that it doesn't necessarily activate those types of learnings as effectively as it would in normal means of learning. And so that sort of goes into the cognitive aspects.
Okay, but like, why can't learning from a technological device be one of those facets? Why can't it be a part of an educational?
Essentially, what we find is that it's actually less effective than normal means of learning, and that's simply put, and that fulfills the resolution because it proves that it actually hinders learning.
All right, thank you.
Look to the opponent's case, we find a couple of flaws. First, let's look at the idea that the opponent talks about in regards to necessity and COVID-19. Now, they gave COVID-19 as an example as to why it's actually necessary for children to develop digital literacy skills and to learn from tablets and smartphones at that young of an age. Now, the issue I find with this is that this necessity that the opponent talks about isn't necessarily true. And we find this because of the idea that we can develop these same digital literacy skills later in life, and that it's not necessarily necessary to learn at that young of an age. And because it actually hinders their learning ability at that age, and because they can develop those skills later on in life, as most children, specifically our age, those born between around 1998 to 2005, learned later in life, that they're completely fine that way. And that this necessity doesn't necessarily exist. And because it doesn't necessarily follow up, because by using simple cost-benefit analysis, it's not worth the harms it causes in terms of the learning environment. And this goes into my case and why my case trumps opponent's case, because we need to be talking about the educational context and how it affects their learning. And as I've proven through two main means. One is that empirically through studies and statistics, we find that tablets and smartphones are not effective in an educational context for those children at that age. And secondly, we find that psychologically and neuroscientifically, it doesn't interface with how they're supposed to be or should be learning at that of an age with their mind and their brain. And from that, we find that actually contrasts with the one educational context study that the opponent talked about, which is that 79% of professional educators say technology is becoming a crucial part of classroom education, but it doesn't talk about how effective it is.
As Voltaire, French philosopher, once stated, great is the enemy of good. Yes, social media, technology, and entertainment all have their drawbacks. However, using technology in the classroom outweighs the harms of using technology as an educational tool. For example, my EPT piece of evidence outlined that 87% of pro-educators says that technology helps develop important digital skills in the classroom, and common sense media piece of evidence also showed that teens and young adults who are armed with more technological skills are able to make more changes in the real world. In fact, an MIT team who conducted a longitudinal meta-analysis of over 126 studies found that technological usage from kindergarten improved computer proficiency, a skill that's even more important now with COVID-19. More importantly, they found that technology was able to close disparities for children who had less access to information, leveling the playing field and increasing future educational opportunities. In response to my opponent's Merriam Hospital evidence regarding how smartphone usage can be distracting, the same MIT study also found that technology successfully supports students and families at each stage of schooling and education by increasing parental engagement in learning activities. If we look at my opponent's claims, it doesn't actually contradict anything I've said in today's debate. For example, their California State University evidence just talks about screen time in general. It doesn't mention why technology is harmful in an educational settings. Same with their New York Times evidence. It talks about how children have devices in their bedrooms, not classroom. As the old axiom goes, a tool is neither good nor evil. Its utility depends on how it's being used. If children are taught from a younger age on how to use technology properly and how to learn from technology in an efficient way, its benefits outweigh its harms. This is why I urge a con ballot. Thank you.